The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Namaskar, this is Nadaranjitananda, and we are continuing with our course on Astaunga Yoga. This is the class number 4, and as usual, you can ask questions by typing your questions on the control panel of the webinar. There is a space for questions. And I will answer them either during the webinar or at the end. Okay, so let's get started. On the class number 3, we were talking about the second limb of Ashtanga Yoga. You know, there are 8 limbs. We are talking about the second one, which in Sanskrit is called Niyama. And those are 5 practices to maintain a good relationship with ourselves. The goal is to maintain mental equilibrium, balanced mind, and consequently the development of the first level of the mind, which is the conscious level. So the conscious level is that level of our mind that we are using all the time. So the idea here is that with these practices, we will develop, and develop means to get a better control, to be able to use it for our advantage and not to, let's say, be used by it. Okay. So we want to keep now harmony with ourselves. For the practice of niyama, there is no second entity, only us. And it is basically to improve how we relate to ourselves. Let's just look at the previous classes, 1, 2, and 3. We talked about how to keep a good relationship with others. And those were 5 practices of yama. So we covered that and that in the previous classes. We also covered the first practice of niyama, which is to keep a good relationship with ourselves. And that first practice was cleanliness, or in Sanskrit, shaucha. And we saw all the aspects of this practice in the previous class. So this is just to locate where we are in the course. The course is about the 8 steps of yoga. We covered the first, we are now on the second. And the second is divided into 5 parts. We covered part 1, now let's go today to the second practice. First, let me do a summary from cleanliness, so just to refresh the mind. Cleanliness can be physical, can be mental and physical. Physical can be internal, external. Internal cleanliness is whatever goes within my physical structure. I have to be very careful. I have to choose what is good for me and to keep out what's not good for me. It's a very important practice. Physical, external. My external physical structure, I need to keep it pure, clean. One of our best friends is water. Bathing, using water in different ways to clean the body, to purify the body. And we cannot forget the environment. Keep the environment clean. Okay, so that's about physical cleanliness. But our existence as a human being is mostly mental. So we have to look also after mental cleanliness. There is internal and there is external. Mental external means something is external, is coming to my mind. I have to choose what I allow to come into my mind through my senses, through my vision, taste, touch, ear, or smell. So is that which is coming into my mind good for me or not? Those vibrations, those impressions, those images, those connections, are they good for me or not? If not, keep out. If good, let in. Okay, so that is the something external coming inside my mind. But there is also internal cleanliness, is something that's already in my mind, like it's not coming from the outside, like some jealousy and different other sentiments, which I should also keep out from my mind. So for that, I needed to use some mental, let's say, techniques to keep my mind clean. We talked about it during the class. Okay, so this is the summary. And now I want to go to the next. How to maintain a good relationship with ourselves. Second practice. Second practice is contentment. In Sanskrit, santosha. I like to give the Sanskrit name, and I know it is maybe an extra complication for you, so you don't need to give much attention to it now. Keep it in the back of your mind that there is a Sanskrit word for each of these practices, because when you will study further this subject, you will encounter these Sanskrit words, and it will not be the first time. It will make it easier for you, because most of the yoga philosophy is done by using Sanskrit terms. So don't mind it for now. Concentrate in the concept. For example, the second practice, the concept is contentment. So contentment, it's a little bit different from happiness. Happiness is like this. I come in contact with some object which has a congenial vibration with my, let's say, mental setup. For example, I like something. Let's give a simple example. I like ice cream. What kind of ice cream? Let's say cashew. Okay. Almond ice cream. And I go to the shop and I want almond ice cream. They say, yes, here it is. And so I get the almond ice cream, and at the same time, that's what I wanted. So there is some congenial vibration here. So I feel happy. In case I go to the shop and they say, no, I don't have almond, we don't have almond, we have only chocolate. I don't like chocolate. I don't eat chocolate, so I feel bad. So there is not a congenial vibration, means the waves from outside don't match the waves in my mind. There is some dissatisfaction, okay, or there is some unhappiness. So in our life, sometimes we are happy, sometimes we are unhappy. So I like cars, for example, and now I get a Ferrari. So I feel very happy. Oh, yes, I got it. So there is some, let's say, vibration in my mind, parallels to vibration outside. It's okay. I enjoy some happiness. So I'm enjoying that object. So what's contentment? Now, what happens with happiness and unhappiness, happy, unhappy, is that if I get the object, if I can enjoy that object, I will be happy. If not, I will be unhappy. And there is that desire to get that object. For example, in this case here, Ferrari. Maybe somebody will work hard, his or her half life, to purchase, to get enough money to purchase such an object, and just to find out that it also has some flat tires sometimes, and sometimes it gets a scratch, or I have small accidents, gives me also problems. So if I'm always desiring, with desire to get something, I need this, need that, I will never be satisfied. I will never have attained this state of contentment. I will always remain in a state of discontentment, let's say. Now, contentment comes when, or real contentment comes when there is no more desire for that object. You see, if I'm full of desires, if I want this, want that, and I don't have it, I will not be able to attain that state of contentment. But if I strive, if I put effort to get what I need, what's really important, and not worry about what's superfluous, I have more chance to maintain a state of contentment. I saw this quote. Didn't get an author for it, but it was just saying, all you need is less. Particularly in the more advanced societies of today. Advanced, I mean more well-to-do, with more financial resources. People are developing this attitude of that to get more and more. In fact, it is a characteristic of the human being to want more. We always want more. We are never satisfied with limited. But our want more, if directed to the physical world or even intellectual world, will never get satisfaction, because we will never have all the knowledge. So if we want more and more knowledge, it will always be lacking. And if we want more and more objects, we'll always be lacking something. So we'll never be in a state of contentment. So to remain in a state of contentment is also related to one of the yamas. You know, those practices, the first step of Astaunga Yoga, how to maintain a good relationship with others. One of those practices was aparigraha, or the last one was no accumulation. Live simply. It is very much related to contentment. If I have a simple life, if I don't accumulate anything superfluous, if I'm not aiming to accumulate things that I don't really need, if I'm following that principle of yama called aparigraha, no accumulation, I have much more chance to develop contentment. So there is some very close interrelation here between the yama practice of no accumulation and the niyama practice of contentment. Nowadays, there is a lot of discussion about uncluttering means people thinking they have too many things, so they want to get rid of many of the things. It's a positive step towards aparigraha and towards contentment. The more we have to worry about, the more our mind is occupied with all this stuff, and the less we have time and space for inner joy. So that's a little bit about contentment. The essential things are not much. We don't need that much. As a human being, we don't need too much. If we have nourishing enough food, if we have a comfortable place to live, and transportation, basic things, it's enough. So essentialities are few, but the hunger in us is infinite. We want more and more. So what's essential is very little, but desire so much. And if that hunger is not satisfied, is not satiated, it brings dissatisfaction. So our contentment is lost. And contentment is presented here as one of the 5 points needed to maintain a good relationship with ourselves. And you know that if you are close to a person and that person is in a state of contentment, it is very pleasant to be with that individual. But the opposite, if the person is always dissatisfied, discontent, then it's very unpleasant to be with that person. And not only it's unpleasant for you, it's unpleasant for the person himself or herself to be with him or her if he or she is always in a state of discontentment. One good source of teachings regarding contentment is dogs. We can learn contentment from the dogs. Dogs are satisfied with a little. They will eat, they are satisfied, they go and rest. Opposite to dogs are, for example, bees. Bees, they are producing honey, and they want to produce more, and they produce more until the beehive is full and honey is even coming out, and they are still producing more. So they want more, never satisfied. But dogs, no, they are always satisfied. All right, so that was the second practice. Go back here. The second practice is contentment. First, cleanliness. Second, contentment. Today, I'm going to the third. Third practice, to maintain a good relationship with ourselves. In Sanskrit is tapa. Now English can be translated as selflessness or sacrifice. I know the word sacrifice doesn't sound very good, but in here, this sacrifice is not just suffering. It's basically to act in a selfless way to give happiness to others. It means I will undergo a little bit hardship, but I will make others happy. For example, somebody's hungry. I will spend my money. Maybe I don't have so much money, but a little bit, but I will have to sacrifice a little bit my own comfort so that I use part of my money to feed that hungry person. So by giving that person will be happy. By getting food, he or she will be happy. But if I'm doing that to give food to a rich person who doesn't need, it's not the same thing. We cannot consider that as selfless or sacrifice. If I'm okay, I'm spending my money, so I have less money, but now I'm giving that to somebody who has everything. So it doesn't make any difference. That's not considered tapa. Tapa is when I'm doing certain sacrifice, but it's to give happiness to somebody or to achieve something greater. Here is a Chinese proverb. If you want happiness for an hour, take a nap. If you want happiness for a day, go fishing. If you want happiness for a year, inherit a fortune. If you want happiness for a lifetime, help someone else. Many times we do a little bit sacrifice to help someone else, but that ends up being very positive for us, for our state of mind, and it gives benefit to the society also. So selflessness or sacrifice, or the third practice of niyama, to be ready to undergo some suffering to help others or for a higher cause. For example, if I'm a student, I need to give time to study, and sometimes I have to study hard. It's difficult, forcing my mind. That is a kind of a sacrifice. That is tapa for the student. But I'm doing that for a higher cause. By doing that, I will improve my education. I will be able to perform better in my future life. So that is tapa. So you have to undergo some suffering to bring something positive to others, to the society, to yourself. It's not just suffering. You know, in some religious practices, people will beat themselves until blood comes out, or they will go up the stairs in their knees, hurting their knees and their body, and thinking that they are doing some sacrifice and they will attain some religious, let's say, favor, or they will develop themselves spiritually. But that's not, we don't really agree with that. It's not necessary to create suffering for you unnecessarily. But if you are doing something that you have to suffer a little bit, but you are bringing benefit to others, or you're bringing benefit to yourself, that's different. So two different things here. We have to understand one thing about spirituality. There are many times cases of misinterpretation of spiritual teachings. There is a certain teaching and people just interpret it wrong, understand it wrong, and practice it wrong. So that will not give the same result. But it is very common. So it is very important to develop the sharpness of our mind to be able to discern of what is the right way to apply a certain spiritual teaching. So in this case here, what is the teaching? The teaching is we should be ready to undergo some suffering. For what? To bring benefit to others, to bring benefit to ourselves, for something more important. We should be able to sacrifice something, to go through some suffering. For example, if I'm doing social service, if I'm going somewhere to help other people, it will be hard for me. I will not have a proper place to stay, maybe. I will not have some difficulties with food. It will be a little bit uncomfortable. Maybe I have to carry heavy things. But that kind of sacrifice is positive, is going to bring some benefit. On the other side, if I'm just suffering because I feel that suffering just by having pain and hitting my body, then I'm suffering and then I'm going to purify myself for spiritual reasons. That is a little bit a waste of our, let's say, suffering potential. Okay. So, all right, let's keep going here. I'm going to come to the summary. And today I talked only about 2 practices of niyama. I'm going slow with the jama niyama because I want to give time for you to practice it. Means after one class, you have 1 week up to the next class. So during that week, you can concentrate on the points that we studied during the class. For example, this week we looked at 2 points of niyama. Second one, which is contentment, santosh in Sanskrit. How to practice that? Observe yourself. If any time you notice in you that you are not in a state of contentment, do something to change it, to get back to the state of contentment. Find out why you are not in that state, because this is a practice of niyama. It doesn't depend on anyone else. It's not that somebody outside you is making you lose your contentment. No, it is, we have to understand that it's ourselves. It depends on ourselves. It's a practice that you don't need a second entity. You need only yourself. So it may be that something outside you is happening, which is not very nice, which is, let's say, you don't like it and it's not bringing benefit to you. It is possible. It happens all the time. But it doesn't mean that you have to let it bring you to a state of discontentment, you know. So that's the thing. So observe yourself. If you ever find yourself in a state that you are not maintaining contentment, just remember that it all depends on you. So you make an effort to get back to that state of contentment. If it's because you don't have something, do you really need it? Can you live without it? Do you have enough now to live? Is it okay? Do you have enough? What do you need more? Concentrate your efforts in the right direction. What is really permanent in our life? That we should put all the energy to achieve. What is impermanent? Yes, we do need some energy to maintain our existence, to have some things that are essential for maintenance of our existence, but sometimes we don't need too much. No. Okay, so that was about the second point. The third point of niyama, sacrifice, selflessness, Sanskrit tapha. This one also you can practice this week. Make an effort to help somebody. It will be a little bit discomfort for you, but make that effort and see what is the effect. Okay? And also in your life, what activities you are doing for your family, for your role in the society. Put some extra effort. This extra effort may demand some more from you, but see if it's worth it. At the same time, analyze the sacrifice you are doing to benefit who. Maybe you are doing a lot of sacrifice and that is to benefit somebody who doesn't need, who doesn't recognize, who is making no difference for that someone. Therefore, that we can subtract from our life. So it's some work to do during this week on these 2 points, on the point of contentment, on the point of sacrifice. Am I doing the right sacrifice? Am I maintaining contentment as much as possible? What is causing me discontentment? My sacrifice, what is it bringing to me, to the society, to the people around me? Okay, that much about today's class. There are a few questions here. I'm looking a moment, and so that's time you can type more questions. I want to put one last proverb from Lao Tzu. Be content with what you have. Rejoice in the way things are. When you realize there is nothing lacking, the whole world belongs to you. Okay, so we get back to the questions. One question here. Number 1, is it possible to be always in a state of contentment? Well, the idea here is these are practices. We are practicing it. We are practicing to be more and more in a state of contentment until the culminating point is that we will remain permanently in that state. Until then, it's a practice. So I wouldn't worry about if it's possible or not. I would work on developing it. So practicing it. So let's concentrate on that. And then we will see. Because what happens is when we are practicing something, it develops. So it is growing. So this will be more permanent within us, and we will enjoy the benefits. Okay, another question. What do you think about suffering as a means of purification? Well, we talked a little bit about it. Suffering, yes, by undergoing some suffering, there will be some purification. But, as I mentioned during the presentation, I don't want to inflict pain on myself uselessly, like creating some physical hardship extra. That's not necessary. And I gave the example. Suppose, in India sometimes you will see, I read one story, for example, there was a man, a yogi, so-called yogi, and he was keeping his arm raised for I don't know how many years. He was telling that was sacrifice or tapa, so very accomplished yogi. So he kept the arm up so many years that it even dried up, it couldn't move anymore. I don't think that brings any spiritual benefit. He would well, that's my personal opinion. Maybe he should have used the arm to do something for other people instead of just keeping it up there without any utilization. So I come back to that point of interpretation of spiritual teachings, because you will probably find the same teachings, or at least the same, let's say, words in different places, and different teachers will use the same words and talk about, but you will notice a difference in interpretation, and that difference is essential. It's the key. The key of spirituality is that you do the right practice. So between the right practice and the wrong practice, there is the difference is the interpretation. Okay, because let's say everybody will say, do good to others. Okay, do good to others. Theoretically, perfect, do good to others. But now, when you implement it, you will be in a certain situation. The others are changing. The good changes. What is good for somebody may be not good for someone else. So now you have to be very sharp in your mind to decide what's the right thing to do. So in spirituality, it's very important to develop our capacity, our mind, and our intellect, the sharpness of our understanding of the situation, of people, of ourselves, because then we can act in the right way. Okay, I think this much for now. I would like to close this class for today, and thank you very much. You will get the video. You can watch it again. If there are some questions in your mind, you can still email me, or you can ask during the next class. Thank you very much for giving time to attend this talk. Namaskar.